Well, indeed, of course, the fact that is part of an ongoing conversation in which to mainstream the procurement of goods and services further. Now, that conversation right there brings us to the segment of the show where we take a backwards look at what exactly has been happening in the week and use that to extrapolate a projection for the next week. And to do just that, Ken Geshinga, Chief Economist at Mentoria Consulting, here in studio. Karibu sana.
Asante sana for having me.
Yeah, so I think the simplest and the best way to start is to simply get your take on what exactly you think was the biggest story this week and why that would be the case.
I think the opening up of Ethiopia as an investment destination. We've had KCB, Safaricom, and even today we had Simbacolt are all looking at opportunities in Ethiopia. And I've said this in the past, Ethiopia is a sleeping giant.
Yes.
And it seems that the new young president is very youthful, very vibrant, and he really wants to create a lot more investment capital into Ethiopia. So I think that's going to be a major game changer moving forward.
One of the things that Ethiopia has going for it is the fact that it has a very large population, most of them youthful, most of them starting to come into the money-making segment. It would seem strange that just today we were discussing here the continued push to curb population growth, but it seems to be a plus in other countries. How do you balance the two then?
The people who make population look as an asset, other people make it look like a liability. But if you really think about the BRICS, for example, these are one that was coined almost a decade ago. And the one thing they have in common is they have massive population. Well over Ethiopia has almost 100 million people. Granted, the education levels can improve, the ability to communicate maybe in English with the rest of the world. Those are the things that can maybe sophisticate the market. But the fact that you have 100 million people who want to participate in a regional economy, any chief executive officer needs to take that seriously.
Let's talk about the other big story today, the fact that East Africa Broad is limited. There's some 73 billion shillings in top line in revenue for the year, huge numbers.
Right.
We are starting to see the company going very big into Western Kenya, and the projection is that that will grow their balance sheet even further, especially seeing as they've put about 15 billion shillings into the factory and then into about 15,000 farmers across that regional area. Where do you see this going?
You're right. I think the fundamentals are very strong because the underlying base market is a young, youthful market that is consuming their products in events, at homes, and for me, that's only going to continue. I think what they need to look at is areas around competition, which they have done very well in terms of building a strong brand, and also opening up in the other bigger cities across the country. Obviously, Nairobi and Mombasa have been their biggest markets, but now areas are around Nakuru, Eldoret, Western, all those are places where there is a new middle class coming up. So I think if you look at those numbers as a fundamental, then any investor in that stock should be fairly confident. In
the numbers that they put out, the fastest single segment in terms of growth was spirits in double digits, between 20 and 30%. And essentially, this remains a huge, huge market out there. Whiskeys, rums, those sorts of things. These are things that many Kenyans were not used to before, but now seem to be in vogue. Why do you think this is the case?
You know, we always say Kenyans are it's a peculiar country because when I talk to a lot of businessmen out there, they say they're facing a lot of cash crunch challenges. Maybe you've supplied services to the county government or the national government and you've not gotten your payment on time. So that creates a lot of rigidity. But somehow on the weekends, Kenyans always seem to have some disposable income for this very high-end liquors.
Could this then, sorry to interrupt you, be pointing to the inequality in the economy? Because at one extreme end, people, the so-called upper level of the middle class you're talking about may be flush with cash, but there's no trickle down to the rest of the economy, which would actually be sort of alluded to, because in the same numbers, Senator Keg was marginally down and due to various factors, but one of the things was the, of course, fallout from the elections and the continued impact on the economy.
It could be, but I'm also referring to those upper middle class people that you're referring to. Even they, when I speak to many of them, are having some major cash challenges, but for one reason or another, there's always ways to find something on Fridays and on Saturdays. So for me, it's one of those areas where I think the companies have discovered this is a very a virgin territory that even during economic tough times, there'll still be some disposable income that's set aside for that kind of consumption. So I think for them, they're very happy with that kind of dynamic.
One challenge that that business and others continues to face is illicit in various ways, be they parallel imports, be they counterfeits, and those sorts of things. Now, many Kenyans, even as they start to consume these whiskeys and other premium liquor, are not used to the taste, so really wouldn't know what's an original Johnny Walker, Thackeray, or something else, as opposed to something that has been made in Kariobangi. So what do you think needs to happen going forward to enable these companies start to consolidate the market and protect it from all these grey things that are going on in the market?
Obviously, there's an element of education that these companies have to, because even these are alcohols that have to be consumed responsibly, and they have sort of played that role in an effective way. But I can't remember any campaign that helped people distinguish between a fake Johnny Walker and an authentic one. And you'll go to the biggest supermarkets and find some of these fake products in there, and which can actually cause food poisoning. And I've seen people suffer from food poisoning from such things. So I think it's an area they can do a lot more campaign education.
Let's talk about agriculture, especially seeing that it's such a big aspect of our economy, and the fact that there are various efforts, not in the least of which today is the Nyeri International Trade Fair. Lots of agriculture coming through there. A few hours ago, we saw them being told about thing they call it cherry tomato, and some people saying this is just a snack. So these sorts of things, how do we start to drive our farmers towards new technology, new crops that will appeal to a bigger audience in the international markets?
Well, it begins with exposure and helping them understand what is value addition in their particular sector. Think of a fruit such as a plum.
Yes.
You know, it's a very interesting fruit. It grows in certain parts of the Rift Valley. Not many people fully understand what more can you do. With a plum, you can create jam. You can have a whole jam manufacturing subsector. So I think first it begins with the exposure. After the exposure, now it's how do you get people to create small industries where plums can be sort of transformed into jam. And that requires some capital, and that's where the county government can really help churn in some of the investment capital in those kind of areas. But at the end of the day, if it all comes down to value addition.
Well, on that note, Ken, thank you very much for your time. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but asante sana for coming in and sharing the insights with us. Of course, reading the economic tea leaves, as we put it. Thank you very much for your time.
Always a pleasure, Peter.
Yeah, on that note, we want to bring it to a close for this half of the show. Of course, over the next 30 minutes, we will be taking you to the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Abi again, we'll be sitting down with the CEO of the Crown Paints to give insights into just what exactly that company is doing to drive its economy and your economy forward over the next few months. Well, do stay with us for that and continue to enjoy your viewing.